Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it on a Sunday morning, standing in the kitchen with a Starbucks cup in her hand, wearing that tailored black blazer she saved for important meetings. The sunlight hit the counter just right, and she looked almost angelic when she said it. "We're married. That doesn't mean I owe you anything." I didn't argue. I just stood there, holding the wrench I hadn't put down yet from fixing the leaking pipe under the sink. The words didn't hit right away. They just floated there, sharp and cold, like the hum of an engine before it dies. Then she grabbed her purse, checked her reflection in her phone camera, and left. Her name's Rachel, 31, office manager at a law firm downtown. Sharp voice, perfect posture, always one step ahead in every conversation. She used to come home smelling like vanilla and exhaustion, grateful to leave that world of endless smiles and quiet politics. Lately, she came home smelling like his cologne. Expensive, subtle, the kind that says promotion. Her boss, Mark Stevens, senior partner, polished, confident. The kind of man who never had dirt under his nails, who probably paid someone else to fill up his car. I saw them together once, outside Olive Garden, laughing too easily, standing too close. She saw me too, but didn't flinch. Just said later, "Don't be insecure. He respects me." Insecurity wasn't the problem. Insults were. The slow, casual ones that start to rot the foundation. "You wouldn't understand," she'd say when I asked about work. "It's complicated." Then one night, after I'd worked 12 hours straight at the shop, covered in grease, she told me I should look into management if I wanted to contribute more. She said it like she was helping me, like ambition was something I'd misplaced. I noticed the late-night texts next, the glow of her phone lighting up the bedroom. She'd turn it face down when I looked over. Then the business trips started, conferences that lasted longer than they should have. When she got back, her stories didn't match the receipts. I stopped asking, not out of fear, but clarity. I could see the path she'd chosen. Status over loyalty. Validation over truth. That night, I sat in my Ford F-150 outside the shop long after closing. The city lights reflected on the hood, steady and distant. I thought about what she said, how she owed me nothing. And for the first time, I believed her. By the time she got home, the papers were already drafted. Not accusations, just signatures. Clean. Final. She wanted freedom? I'd give her exactly what she asked for, nothing. The morning I decided to end it didn't feel dramatic. No big fight, no yelling. Just silence, the kind that settles after something dies quietly. Rachel left early, said she had a client breakfast. She wore the same perfume she used on our anniversary. I didn't say a word. I watched her drive off and realized I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. At the shop, everything felt simple again. Oil, steel, noise, things that made sense. I replaced a transmission, fixed a Ford, laughed with the guys. No pretending. No fake smiles. The kind of day that reminds you who you are before someone starts making you doubt it. Around lunch, I checked my phone. Nothing from her. But one of my buddies, Jason, texted me. "Man, I think I saw your wife at that new restaurant downtown. With her boss." He didn't know what to say after that. He didn't have to. That night, she came home late. Her lipstick was faded, and her voice had that light, careless tone that comes from trying too hard to sound normal. She said dinner went long, lots of office talk. I just nodded, watching her place her purse on the table. A receipt slipped out, Olive Garden again. 2 meals, 1 bottle of wine. She looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I didn't give her one. Instead, I said I had paperwork to finish for the shop. She smiled, relieved, like she'd won a quiet argument I never agreed to. But while she showered, I sat at the kitchen table and pulled up the document I'd started days before, the divorce petition. Plain, clean, no drama. I filled in the missing dates, attached the notary forms, printed everything on fresh paper. It felt efficient, like closing a project that had run too long past deadline. When she came out of the bathroom, she was humming, scrolling through her phone, probably messaging him. She passed by me and said, "You're always working lately." I said, "So are you." She didn't catch the tone. Maybe she didn't want to. The next morning, I drove to the courthouse before work. Filed everything. No calls, no confrontation, just a signature. The clerk asked if I wanted her served at home or at work. I said work. She wanted to live in that world of suits and ambition. Let her get the news there. In front of her boss, her colleagues, her carefully built image. I left the courthouse calm. She said she owed me nothing. And now, she was about to find out what nothing really feels like. When the papers hit her desk, I wasn't there to see it. I didn't need to be. The clerk called to confirm service was complete. Her signature received, no resistance. But later that afternoon, I started getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored every one of them until a message came through. You could have talked to me first. It was from her, short and sharp, like everything she said when control slipped through her hands. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Talking was for people who still wanted to fix something. What we had wasn't broken, it was finished. There's a difference. Jason told me later how it went down. Said one of her coworkers mentioned she froze when the courier handed her the envelope. She'd been sitting in a conference room with her boss, mid-meeting. The silence after that was apparently long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. Then she left the room, pale, shaking. The next day, she didn't show up to work. I spent that night at the shop, finishing up a restoration job, an old Chevy, rusted but solid. I like that kind of work. You could sand down the damage, rebuild the core, give something a second life. People aren't like that. Once corrosion hits the inside, no amount of polish fixes it. Around midnight, she finally texted again. Longer this time. Said she was confused, that we were going through a rough patch, that I was overreacting. The same words she used whenever she needed to minimize the damage. I could almost hear her voice. Calm, logical, professional. It used to fool me. Not anymore. I turned off my phone, wiped my hands, and locked the shop. The air outside smelled like rain, clean and new. Driving home, I realized how quiet the car felt without her voice filling it. No music, no small talk. Just peace. When I got back, the house was dark except for the glow of her vanity light. She was sitting there, makeup half removed, eyes red. The papers were on the counter. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just asked, "Is this really what you want?" I looked at her, the woman who once made my world loud, who now sat surrounded by silence she'd created. And I said, "You said you owed me nothing. I'm just returning the favor." Then I walked out before she could answer. The sound of the door closing felt cleaner than any goodbye I'd ever said. She didn't leave that night. I could hear her moving around the house long after I'd gone to bed. Drawers opening, papers shifting, her voice breaking into quiet whispers on the phone. She was trying to get ahead of the story, no doubt, making it sound like a misunderstanding, a temporary separation. People like her don't lose gracefully. They negotiate the narrative. By morning, she was gone. Not her things, just her presence. Her car wasn't in the driveway, but her coffee cup was still sitting on the counter, lipstick smudged on the rim. I poured it out, washed it clean, and placed it upside down. Small gestures, but final ones. At the shop, Jason asked if I was okay. I told him I was better than I'd been in months. He laughed and said he'd seen her car parked outside her boss's office again. That didn't sting anymore. It just confirmed what I already knew. She'd always choose the world that applauded her over the one that understood her. Later that afternoon, a delivery came for me at the shop, a box from her favorite store, Target. Inside was the photo album from our wedding, the one she made me promise never to lose. No note, no explanation, just the past in cardboard. I didn't open it. I left it on a shelf next to the used oil filters and let the dust start collecting. That night, I got home and found her waiting in the kitchen. No makeup, no designer clothes. Just Rachel, small, human, nervous. She said she'd signed the papers. Her voice trembled when she said it. Then she tried to explain, said she didn't plan it, that it just happened. I didn't interrupt. I let her fill the silence, because the silence was what she'd earned. When she finished, she said, "You're really not going to say anything?" I looked at her. Everything in me wanted to remember her the way she was before ambition became her addiction. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who mistook opportunity for affection. So I told her the truth, calm, simple. I already said everything I needed to. In writing. She nodded slowly, eyes glassy. Then she whispered, "You really mean it, don't you?" I didn't answer. I just walked past her, grabbed my jacket, and left. Outside, the sky was clear. The air smelled like rain that never came. And for the first time in a long while, I felt clean too. like someone who'd finally stopped trying to fix what wasn't broken, just bent beyond repair. The week after she signed the papers, the silence hit her harder than I expected. I didn't block her number. I didn't need to. The lack of noise was punishment enough. The first few days, she texted constantly, short messages at first, then longer ones, like she was trying to find the version of me that still cared. Can we talk? It doesn't have to end like this. I made a mistake. I read them, but I didn't reply. Every message sounded less like love and more like someone trying to reclaim control. At the shop, things stayed normal. The guys didn't bring it up, but they knew. Word gets around fast in a small town. Someone said they saw her boss eating alone at Olive Garden one night, looking miserable. I didn't ask for details, but I could guess what happened. In her world, power only lasts as long as the illusion does. Maybe he realized she wasn't promotion material anymore. Maybe he just got bored. Either way, it wasn't my problem. By Friday, she showed up at the shop. She looked smaller somehow, fragile in a way she never allowed herself to be. The office clothes were gone. She wore jeans and a plain gray hoodie, the same one she used to steal from me when we were still us. She stood in the doorway while I worked under a car, too scared to step closer. She said she just wanted to see me, that she'd quit her job, that everything with her boss meant nothing. I didn't answer right away. I just wiped the grease from my hands and finally looked at her. She was waiting for emotion, for proof that I still cared enough to fight. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. She asked if there was any way back. Her voice cracked when she said it, and for a second, I almost believed it was genuine. But the thing about betrayal is, once it's done, even honesty sounds like strategy. I told her I'd already mailed the final documents. There was nothing left to discuss. She nodded, biting her lip, holding back tears. Then she said something that almost made me laugh. "You're colder than I thought." I told her the truth. No, just finally calm. She didn't reply. She just turned and walked out. The door closed, the sound fading into the hum of the shop. That's when I realized peace doesn't come when you win. It comes when you finally stop playing. After that day at the shop, she didn't come by again. The messages stopped, the calls went quiet. For a while, I wondered if the silence would feel empty, but it didn't. It felt earned. The air at home was cleaner without her perfume clinging to the walls, without the constant buzz of her phone lighting up the counter. I'd never realized how loud she'd made everything until she was gone. 2 weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that she'd left the firm. They said it wasn't her choice. Something about unprofessional conduct and office boundaries. I didn't ask for details. Her boss was married too, and apparently, his wife had found out. The fallout wasn't cinematic. No screaming, no headlines, just quiet humiliation, the kind that travels fast through small corporate circles. She got what she chased. Recognition, just not the kind she wanted. I saw her once more after that. It was late, maybe 10 p.m., at a Walmart parking lot. I was grabbing supplies for the shop. Oil, gloves, the usual. She was there too, standing by her car, staring at the steering wheel like she was trying to remember what direction her life used to point. She saw me and froze. I nodded, polite, detached. She gave a faint smile, like she'd been waiting for me to acknowledge she still existed. She tried to talk, said she missed the version of me who used to fix everything. I told her that version doesn't exist anymore. She looked down and said she was sorry, that she'd forgotten what real love felt like. I didn't tell her, but I knew she hadn't forgotten. She traded it. And once you sell something genuine for status, there's no buyback. When I drove away, she was still standing there, motionless under the fluorescent lights, clutching her Starbucks cup like it could warm her from the outside in. Back home, I opened the last envelope from the court, finalized, stamped, official. The kind of closure that doesn't need conversation. I placed it in a drawer, locked it, and sat on the porch. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I'd lost a wife. I felt like I'd regained a life. And as the night settled around me, I realized something simple. When you stop begging to be valued, the silence that follows isn't loneliness. It's peace disguised as freedom. After the divorce was finalized, I thought I'd feel a rush of something. Anger, relief, maybe even pride. But what I felt was quieter than all that. It was like finally shutting off an engine that had been running too long. The silence after the noise. The calm after the wreck. I kept my focus where it belonged, work. The shop was steady, loyal customers, no drama. The kind of world that didn't lie. Metal either held or it broke. There was no pretending. I'd started taking more night shifts too, fixing up an old Mustang for a friend. Sometimes I'd stay long after closing, just to listen to the echo of tools hitting the floor, the kind of sound that reminds you you're still building something, even if it's just yourself. Rachel, on the other hand, didn't vanish completely. I heard her name every now and then, whispers through mutual friends, bits of gossip I didn't ask for. She was renting a small apartment downtown, taking freelance admin work. No promotion, no fancy office, no boss to charm. Just her, alone with her reflection. People said she looked thinner, quieter, that she stopped going out with her old coworkers, that she'd started showing up at church again. Maybe she was trying to rebuild something, but I'd stopped caring what that was. One night, I stopped by Olive Garden for takeout. When I walked in, I saw her sitting in a corner booth alone. No wine, no company, just a plate of untouched food and that same distant stare she used to give her phone. She saw me, and for a second, her face lit up. Not with arrogance, not with control, but hope. The kind that dies fast when reality doesn't respond. I nodded politely and turned away. I heard her whisper something as I walked past, but I didn't turn to listen. Driving home, I realized something important. Forgiveness doesn't always look like kindness. Sometimes it's the ability to see someone suffer the consequences of their choices and not feel the need to intervene. When I parked the car outside the house, I sat there for a minute, staring at my hands. They were rough, stained, tired, but steady. I used to think love was about fixing broken things. Now I knew better. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be left where they fell. It had been 3 months since the divorce went through when she showed up again. It was a Saturday morning, and I was outside the shop washing the car. The sun had barely come up, the streets still quiet. I heard the tires first, slow, uncertain, then her voice, soft but trembling. She said she just wanted to talk. Rachel looked different. Not polished, not made up for the world. Just human. Tired eyes, hair pulled back, sweatshirt faded. She said she'd been working part-time, trying to get back on her feet. She mentioned therapy, something about understanding patterns. Then she looked at me and said, "You were right. I built my life around people who clapped for the wrong things." I didn't answer right away. I kept drying the hood of the car, watching her reflection in the metal. She kept talking about how quiet her apartment felt, how her phone didn't light up like it used to, how she finally realized attention wasn't love. It sounded rehearsed, but maybe that's just how confession sounds when it's new. When she finished, she asked if we could start over, not as husband and wife, but as people. I could hear the hope behind the words, fragile and heavy. She said she'd changed, that she'd learned to value what mattered. I looked at her for a long moment, remembering all the nights I'd come home covered in grease while she scrolled through her phone, half listening, half dreaming of some life shinier than ours. I told her I didn't hate her. I told her I hoped she found peace. But I also told her that peace wasn't something you got from returning. It's something you earn by staying gone long enough to face yourself. Her eyes filled, but she didn't argue. She nodded slowly, like she already knew the answer before she asked. She reached out to hug me. I didn't move. It wasn't anger. It was just clarity. She pulled her hand back, wiped her face, and whispered, "You really did stop loving me, didn't you?" I didn't respond. Some questions don't deserve words, only silence. As she walked back to her car, I realized something. She wasn't chasing power anymore. She was chasing peace, the same thing I'd already found. But peace only comes when you stop confusing closure with connection. I finished washing the car, locked up the shop, and left her in the rearview mirror, exactly where the past belongs. After that morning, I didn't see her for a while. The conversation replayed in my head a few times, but not with regret. More like an old movie I'd already memorized. Her words didn't sting anymore. They just floated there, quiet, harmless. I'd already grieved what was lost long before she realized it was gone. The days moved steady. The shop stayed busy, weekends were quiet. Sometimes I'd grab breakfast at Waffle House before work. Same table, same waitress who always called me Han. I liked the predictability. It made life feel grounded again. No chaos, no mixed signals, no waiting for someone who kept choosing someone else. Then one night, while I was closing the garage, Jason stopped by. He said he'd run into Rachel at a Target near downtown. She was working there now, part-time in customer service. He said she looked worn out, like someone still trying to fix what couldn't be repaired. He hesitated before adding, "She asked about you." I told him there wasn't much to tell. He nodded, like he understood that chapter was sealed. Still, a part of me wondered what her life looked like now. Not out of nostalgia, more out of curiosity. So one night, I looked her up. Her social media was gone. Deleted. Just like that. No photos, no updates, no version of herself left for the world to scroll through. Maybe she finally learned what silence feels like. Maybe she finally saw its power. Weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name in handwriting I hadn't seen in months. Inside was the photo from our wedding, the one where she was laughing at something I'd whispered. On the back, she'd written, "Thank you for letting me learn the hard way." No signature, no apology, just truth. I sat there a while, staring at that picture. There was no anger left, no sadness either. Just the kind of peace that comes when you finally understand why something had to end. She wanted a life that looked impressive. I wanted a life that felt real. We both got what we asked for. I burned the photo in the fire pit out back. Watched the edges curl, watched her smile disappear into smoke. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was losing her all over again. I felt like I was finally done holding on. The night I burned that photo, I thought it would feel like an ending. But it didn't. It felt like balance, like setting something down that had been heavy for too long. The flames ate the paper quietly, without drama, without resistance. When it was done, all that was left were ashes that the wind took care of. Clean. Simple. Final. I didn't hear from Rachel again after that. No calls, no letters, no more ghosts in my inbox. She was gone, not in the way people vanish, but in the way a storm finally passes, slowly, quietly, leaving the air clearer than before. The house felt bigger now, lighter. I'd repainted the walls, fixed the loose floorboards she always said she'd get to later. It was strange how doing small repairs made the silence feel more like mine. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about how different we'd been from the start. I was grease and grit. She was coffee meetings and clean lines. She wanted to climb. I just wanted to build. We were never at war. We were just standing on different ground, pretending it was the same. It took losing everything to finally see it. One afternoon, I drove past her old office downtown. The nameplates had changed. Her boss, the man she once traded us for, wasn't there anymore either. I heard he'd transferred out of state. The firm was quiet, sterile, like nothing ever happened inside it. And maybe that's the truth. Nothing real ever did. Later that evening, I stopped at Olive Garden for dinner. Same booth where I'd once seen her laughing with him. Different atmosphere now. I ordered my meal, sat back, and watched the families around me. No bitterness, no tension, just life continuing as it should. When I left, the waitress handed me the receipt, and for a moment, the pen in my hand felt heavier than it should. It reminded me of the day I signed the divorce papers, the day I learned that peace can look like paperwork. Driving home, the sun was low, painting the road gold. I thought about her one last time, about how she once said, "Being married doesn't mean I owe you anything." Back then, it sounded cruel. Now it just sounded true. Because love isn't about owing. It's about choosing. And when someone stops choosing you, the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight for them. It's to give them exactly what they asked for, nothing. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.